Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 30th day of June, 2026 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 3, Karma Yoga, text number 41 or 40? 41. Text 41 on page 177. Yeah, you can sit here. Yeah, that's good. Text 41 on page 177. Yeah. I'll wait until you hit page 177. Tasmat tvam indriyani adav niyamya bhadatarshabha papmanam pajahi hi enam jnana vijnana nashanam tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bhadatarshabha papmanam pratihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Okay, get a books. Book. Why do we hand out all the books? You can pile them up over there. All right. Maybe you can look on with her. Okay. All right, she'll bring you a book. Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bhadatarshabha papmanam pratihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bhadatarshabha papmanam pratihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Tapas, you want to try? Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyam bhadatarshabha papmanam pratihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Prema. Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bhadatarshabha papmanam pratihyenam nashanam. Jnana vijnana nashanam. Roy, you want to try? Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bhadatarshabha papmanam pratihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Okay. Ladies? Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bhadatarshabha papmanam pratihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bhadatarshabha papmanam pratihyenam jnana vijnana nashanam. Anyone else want to try? Tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bhadatarshabha Papmanam Prajahiyenam Jnana Vijnana Nashanam. Two? Who's on? What's the name? That's Chaitanya here, but the next one? Vanessa.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Tasmat tvam indriyanyado.
Tasmat tvam indriyanyado.
Niyamya bharatarshava.
Niyamya bharatarshava.
Papmanam prajahihenam.
Papmanam prajahiyenam.
Jnana vijnana nashanam.
Jnana vijnana nashanam. Chaitanya Leela.
Tasmat tvam indriyanado.
Tasmat tvam indriyanyado.
Niyamya bharatarshava.
Niyamya bharatarshava.
Papmanam prajahiyenam.
Papmanam prajahiyenam.
Jnana vijnana nashanam.
Jnana vijnana nashanam. All right, before we go on, I want to read something from the Sanskrit pronunciation guide at the back of this book, because there's a science to how to chant these verses, and it's good if we're going to be chanting and learn more about it. All right, where is it? Sanskrit? Oh, here we go. Okay, on page 734 at the bottom. Okay, let me get everyone. You 734 at the bottom. Okay, this is a little paragraph that teaches us how to chant the meter. There's something called chanda, which means meter, as it goes. And there is no strong accentuation of syllables in Sanskrit or pausing between words in a line. And I'm going to show how that's important. Only a flowing of short and long syllables, the long twice as long as the short. Or in the official term is heavy and light. The long is heavy and the short is light. A long syllable is one whose vowel is long, a, I, u, ri, a, I, o, ow, or whose short vowel is followed by more than one consonant. The letters H with a dot and M with a dot over would count as consonants. Aspirated consonants followed by an H count as single consonants. So let me just apply this rules to this verse that we just read. Now, the tendency is tasmat tvam indriyanyado. It seems perfectly natural. But if you notice, the word tvam ends with a consonant, and the next word begins with a vowel. And so there's no reason to stop after the M. So it's not tasmat tvam indriyanyado. It's tasmat tvam indriyanyado. Do you see the difference? It's as if there was tvam indriyanyado. The consonant followed by a single vowel. That makes the or tvam syllable into light or quick. Similar thing with niyamya bharatarshava. That's a natural way to say it. But there's no, that space there shouldn't. The a in ya, short vowel is followed by a single consonant. And this is tricky because it's BH, but notice that it mentioned the aspirates, the H. It doesn't count. The BH counts as one consonant, not two. And therefore it's not niyamya bharatarshava, which is a natural way to say it. Niyamya bharatarshava. You see the difference there? Because when you get into the longer verses, you're really going to have to know these rules. Now I have a sheet I can send you. Dravida's 6 easy steps in learning shlokas. And there's something in there about meter. This little paragraph here is expanded upon. So now the next, just the second line. Papmanam prajahiyenam. So at the end of the word papmanam, you have the M with the dot over it. That's called anusvar, right? Right. And that means that automatically the syllable num, there num is a heavy syllable. That's what the M means. The next word begins with a consonant. You have two consonants. Remember, the rule is, even though it's a short A in num, it's followed by two consonants. Forget about the space. So that makes that num, it's a quarter note as opposed to an eighth note. Papmanam prajahi. Prajahi. The A is followed by a single consonant. The next A is followed by a single consonant, I. And the I is followed by two consonants, HY. So it's Papmanam Prajahi. See, I stopped there. Prajahi Yenam. Now this kind of is tricky if you don't know what to do. HY is Yenam. You're looking for the E, because otherwise it's just two consonants. Yenam. And A is automatically long, so you wait. And then, as soon as you see an M with a dot over it, that means it's a heavy syllable, because the next word begins with a consonant, jnana. And then jnana vijnana. See, you don't stop after jnana. It's not jnana vijnana nashanam. Jnana vijnana nashanam. Anyway, jnana vijnana nashanam. You see that? So then, when you get into longer verses, smita aloka shokam hadajitakatam yasya padito, you'll be able to navigate them or to figure them out. And gradually, with practice, you'll be able to smoothly chant them. A little slower. Smita loka shoka mahadajitakatam yasya padito. Or one that beginning of this introduction. The introduction in itself is a very nice summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita. It's nice studying. But at the beginning, Srila Prabhupada gives us what's called the Mangalacharan, which means a series of introductory verses to a piece of literature, such as this Bhagavad Gita. And one of the verses he's offering obeisances to a whole series of exalted souls. So the first line is Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha. It's not Shri Yuta Padakamalang, Shri Yuta Padakamalang. Vandeham Shri Guru. Why don't we turn to it? I'll just give, and then we'll continue with our. Because I just wanted to give you an introduction of this, because it's a very important part of the beauty of the Sanskrit language, this chanda. It makes it very musical. All right, page 1. Look on page 1, the whole book, introduction. And there's that long verse that I was talking about. You see it in the middle of the page? On page 1. Okay. So I'm not going to expect you to chant this, but you'll see this is how, if you can know the rules, then you can figure out verses like this. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaganadagunatam Vitamtam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Padijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha. You see that? Too much, but it's just a little indication of the beauty and of the Sanskrit language, and it's very sophisticated, and you can do so much with it. It's a total meditation. Of course, you have to do it slow enough so you can understand the meaning of the words, but still, it's very amazing. Okay, we're in chapter 3. What was the page number we're on? 177. Okay, so let me continue with that. Yeah, that's almost the end of the chapter. Okay. All right, so translation. Yeah, okay. Translation. Therefore, O Arjun, best of the Bharatas, Translation. Therefore, O Arjun, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. Purport. The Lord advised Arjuna to regulate the senses from the very beginning so that he could curb the greatest sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self-realization and specific knowledge of the self. Jnana refers to knowledge of self as distinguished from non-self, or in other words, knowledge that the spirit soul is not the body. Vijnana refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul's constitutional position and his relationship to the Supreme Soul. It is explained thus in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.9.31. Jnanam padamaguhyam me yadvijnana samanvitam sarahasyam tadangamcha grahana gaditam maya. The knowledge of the Self and the Supreme Self is very confidential and mysterious. But such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if explained with their various aspects by the Lord Himself. Close quote. The Bhagavad Gita gives us that general and specific knowledge of the Self. The living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord, and therefore they are simply meant to serve the Lord. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So from the very beginning of life, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness, and thereby one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. Lust is only the perverted reflection of the love of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness from the very beginning, that natural love of God cannot deteriorate into lust. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotional service. So from any stage of life, or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord, and turn the lust into love of Godhead, the highest perfectional stage of human life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, I always appreciated this, these last 10 or 12 verses in the third chapter, because Arjuna asks a question which I think we can all relate to. What is it? Let's see. We can go back to the actual words here. Text 36. Arjuna asks the question: O descendant of Vishnu, or Krishna, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? Now, just as a little personal sidelight, as our old friend Bhajan Rayamaj would say, I joined this movement in 1973. And I was living on the Lower East Side for several years, about two blocks from a park called Tompkins Square Park. You may have heard of it. This is where Prabhupada first started chanting Hare Krishna publicly. This was after. He was doing that in '67. I moved in '68. By that time, I think he'd already gone into another place as base. But his devotees were still there, and I would see them on the street, chanting and dancing and so forth. But by Krishna's grace, I didn't get very much entangled in the drug culture. To be honest, I'll confess I was smoking marijuana pretty much every day. But that, eventually I gave up, obviously, when I moved into the temple. But some of the friends I had and others, you could see, they were deep into LSD, and then came heavier drugs, methamphetamines, and even at that point, heroin is all over the place. And you could see people destroying themselves with it. I could see that even without any perspective like this. And so I was great. I didn't get too deeply into it, thank God. So what is it that impels one to get involved in that? Whether it's alcohol, which has been around for thousands of years, or these more modern drugs. Because there's this desire to experience greater pleasure, to somehow, have an experience. And it's oftentimes from association, practically almost every time. You're not familiar with it, but your friend gives you, hey, try this. This is really good. You'll like it. Boom. And so this is the world we live in, and it's all you learn from the Srila Prabhupada's books, beginning with Bhagavad Gita, that these are all varieties of personal pleasure. We call it sense gratification, the pleasures that arise from the contact of the senses with the sense objects, which is practically all we know. in our conditioned state, you see. And those pleasures are what Prabhupada called, is the immortal phrase, perverted reflections, distorted reflections of the original love for Krishna, the original pleasure, which we can't even conceive of engaging in this loving devotional service to God. The closest thing we have to it in the material world is a mother's love for a little baby, you know, a newborn baby, like 6 weeks, a month old, a year old or something. The baby is completely dependent on the mother, doesn't know anything else. And the mother is, you know, completely fixed on the baby is well fed and stays well and is happy and comfortable. In other words, she's identifying with the needs of the child. And if the child is, you know, feeding nicely at the mother's breast and she's sleeping soundly and waking up, and if it just gives the mother a little smile, you know, even without any teeth or very few teeth, so, you know, growing, still that's it makes the mother's day. You know, the mother doesn't, it's not like, all right, you want to suck my breast? What do I get? And what am I getting? It's not like that. There's no exchange like that. It's completely out of caring and loving for the child. That's the purest reflection we have it in the material world. But the whole spiritual world is like that, in that everyone is fixed on loving Krishna, expressing that love, and feeling his love in exchange. There's no thing, well, you know, that, well, I'm going to build up a separate, you know, position where I can have my own sense gratification. As soon as you have that idea, you come here. Yeah.
Oh, does it work? Yeah. I forget which yogi said it, but there was even one yogi that said that love needs to be like a woman breastfeeding, like you just said. But when you don't breastfeed, your breasts will get engorged and they will hurt. And so he said love has to be like that you want to give it so much that it hurts.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, you find that in the descriptions, which we find in the Srimad Bhagavatam, of Krishna's activities in the spiritual world. And, you know, the closest thing we have to something like that is when Krishna calls the gopis for the rasa dance with the flute, you know. They can't not go out, you know, their husbands even, you know, somehow they got to get out there and, you know. But it's interesting, it's very clear in all the literature that they're going out there because they feel Krishna wants them to come out and they're doing it for his pleasure. And by doing that, and giving him pleasure, they're experiencing the highest pleasure they can be, the exchange of love with God, you see. And so this whole section here is just very relatable, because you find, you know, even in your, I mean, I've been doing this for, you know, almost 50 years, more than 50 years, 53 years. And so, you know, if and I was fortunate enough to join in full time, you know, so I didn't have distractions. And I just dove in because the chanting and the association and the deities and the prasadam, you know, all of that was what can I say? It killed my desire to do material things. I really hadn't, you know, wasn't into it. It wasn't like I was tempted to leave, you know, because I had to do the pots or something, you know. That was just another surrender, you know, doing the pots after the Sunday feast. A lot of pots. You can look in our, probably right now, it's Tuesday, we still got pots from the Sunday feast. Anyway, maybe not, I don't want to, you know, but sometimes it's like that. But there's all of these things that suddenly you have to surrender to. Now we have some newcomers here, so I'm going to tell a story that those who have heard these classes, actually there are, Tapas has probably heard this maybe 20 times. The first surrender, you know, because I in those days, joining Hare Krishna meant moving in. There was hardly any congregation, no, hardly, you know, it was just the way it was. So I was fortunate to dive in and moved in. And it was a very dynamic temple. There were a lot of devotees there. That was the one temple in the world where the books were being put together, where the books were being edited and typeset and all these different things, which I didn't immediately engage in that, but after a few months, I suggested, I was reading if you want that, you can sit on the bench. You can, and then you'll have a bag. You okay? Because, yeah, sorry. What is that? I said you're good, don't be sorry. Okay. So anyway, so I dove in, and one of the main engagements was chanting and dancing on the street. It's a whole different experience, you know. I mean, it's great to have an incredible kirtan in the temple, and we have it every Sunday, you know. But to take it out and to see the reaction of people, some people are very receptive, you know. Some, you know, they're even dancing and chanting a little bit like that. But it's very pleasing to Krishna, because you're giving you're introducing them to him in the form of sound. This is like one of these transcendental facts that is inconceivable, but it's true that he's present in his name. And by chanting that name, hearing the name, you become transformed, even unwittingly or unconsciously. You know, the subtle transformation. So going out, and that was like 3 hours a day, you know, we were doing that. So it was very enlivening. But when I first moved in, then the next thing, you know, hey, you know, Mangalarti is at 4:30. That means you have to get up latest 4 o'clock and take a cold shower and, you know, and then put on tilak and all these different things, you know, and get dressed and come down. So that's the challenge. So first cold shower. Now this was in the late March in New York. It was still cold. It was pretty cold. And I don't remember any hot water in this. Anyway, so it's a challenge. Now, I had an advantage. I don't know how many of you practice Hatha Yoga. Probably some have practiced some Hatha Yoga. But we had this training in pranayama. And one of the things in pranayama was the heating breath. Next time you're in some cold water, try it. It works, you know. So I said, when I first took the cold shower, I said, well, let me try this, you know, and then I can get through. And so I did that, and after 17 seconds or so, it was a pretty quick shower, I came out and I passed the first test, you know, and I was ready to go. So the early days were full of challenges like that. But I felt, I don't want to say empowered, but that's what it was, you know, by chanting. I was really into chanting. I felt that, okay, I can tolerate this, you know, this is going to be. And it turned out to be, the austerity became a source of pleasure, because you sacrificed. Just like if you sacrifice for someone you love, you know, a husband really works hard, you know, and supports. That's an expression of love. So Krishna's watching that, how much you're really willing to undergo and accept in order to, you know, serve him. And we should always remember, he's there in the heart, and he reciprocates. He reciprocates. I have a Zoom call with my old friends in Columbus. I used to travel there all the time, and there's a nice temple there, and it's nice devotees. And we go through verses, and selected verses from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And so I was, you know, and it's just like, it's using the facility of the electronics and everything in the best way for Krishna consciousness. Doesn't matter, you know. We're sitting here person to person, which is great. There's also an audience now due to our good friend Tapas, who maintains all these cameras and everything. You know, yeah, Haribol. And there's, I don't know how many are on. You could probably tell me, a dozen maybe, is there? Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, I never had, you know, 1 million followers or anything. I never will probably. But when I first started doing Bhagavad Gita classes in probably 91 or something, there was no question of YouTube or anything like that. Whoever, you know, and I had classes with 2 people, and sometimes I had with 1 person. There was one lady who was always coming, but if I said, you know, I can't give a class just to you alone, I mean, that wouldn't be proper. So she had to drag her friends, you know, gradually had a few. So, but it's, we've been through this Bhagavad Gita maybe 4 or 5 times by now, more, even more. So what I'm trying to say is that this principle of, and I'll use this word because it's just a perfect word, sublimating the material desires, which we all have because we have material bodies, into spiritual desires, is what Krishna consciousness is all about. Is that we have the desire for sense gratification in all of its forms, with the eyes, the ears, and all the other senses. But all those senses, active senses as well as knowledge, can be used to connect us to Krishna. That's what the meaning of yoga is, to connect. So bhakti yoga means the very same ears, especially ears and the voice, you know, the tongue is so important, and the tasting prasadam, that's also very important. But it all connects you to Krishna. You look at this temple room, you know, and everywhere you look, there's things that remind you of Krishna. Or here, Ram, you know, who's an expansion of Krishna, he's an incarnation of Krishna. And there's Lord Chaitanya dancing and chanting. So one who reads the books is familiar with the, what that is, says, oh, that's Lord Chaitanya leading the dancing and chanting in Navadvip. There's Advaita Acharya like that. And there's Krishna teaching Bhagavad Gita in the corner. So your whole environment helps you to remember Krishna, and that's what Krishna consciousness means, to fill your mind with thoughts of Krishna, and especially the holy name. So this section is describing the higher self and the lower self. That with our intelligence, by hearing the philosophy and understanding what's going on, we acquire the spiritual strength to say no to the temptations of the senses, which you may have memories of things, whatever, Anywhere you go. I like to give the example. You've heard this story 20 times, but many haven't. When I was a kid, in like 14, 15, we had a bowling league. Every Saturday we would go to this bowling alley and bowl. One day we saw there was some construction going on in a vacant lot nearby, And when it was done, what was it? McDonald's. There hadn't been any McDonald's. This was the beginning of McDonald's. It was like early 60s. And so now I said, oh, great, now we can just get a nice cheeseburger and fries, before we bowl. I had no consciousness at all how much suffering that cheeseburger would cause that poor cow, and that came later. So I developed a taste for that, when I was part of it. I never thought of it for a minute that it was some sin that I'd have to suffer for. It was just a new way to gratify your senses. So then, at a certain point, I won't go through the whole history, I became a vegetarian at least 2 years before I joined, even learned about Krishna consciousness, for health reasons and also, I think, ethical reasons. But now, for the last it's been 25 years since I moved into the apartment where I live now, which is about a 30-second walk from the temple. And there's been a McDonald's right across the street, But not for 1 second was I thinking, maybe I should go over there and get a. It's just no way, It's gone, and it's more difficult with drugs and alcohol. It's a real addiction, and it's exactly what Krishna described. The senses impel the mind to arrange for something. And then that desire is in the mind, and then it controls you, and it impels you. And up the street here, up the Cass Avenue, it's a major thoroughfare north-south. There are two big churches. There's one Catholic church that's been there since 1948. It's just as old as I am. I'm 78 now, and it's St. Bridget's Catholic Church. They even have a beautiful statue of Jesus speaking to St. Bridget, outside, is sitting there forever. But one of those two churches, I'm not sure which one, has a facility for a AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's a long story. But I had a friend who was a devotee who he became, unfortunately, couldn't, he had an alcoholism problem. So he came here, and he was coming to the programs, but he was also going to AA. And at one point he asked me to come up there to give a talk, because there's a lot of similarity. They rely on, what do they call it? The higher power. They don't want to be sectarian, right? It's God, but so many different religions, fine. And also Sangha, the strength that comes from being in association with others who are also trying to kick the habit, And that's exactly what we rely on. Sadhu Sangha is so important. This is what we're doing here. This is probably, I probably would call it International Society for Krishna Consciousness, because it's a way of giving a facility for exactly what we're doing here. And of course, Kirtan, which is also an association. So what we're aiming for is the highest, level of consciousness, which is understanding ourselves to be pure spiritual beings, and that these bodies are like a set of clothes. In fact, Krishna uses that exact analogy in chapter 2. It says, Vasangsi jirnani hita vihaya navani gunnati naro parani tata shiridani vihaya jirnani yungyani sangyani navani dehi. That the dying and being reincarnated is just like giving up an old set of clothes, our old body, which doesn't work anymore, is not, and taking on a new set. Now, what kind of body we'll get in our next life, we're determining that by everything we do every day. The consciousness we are forming and the activities we are doing, because we're social beings. And if we perform sinful activities or vicious activities, that goes into the bank account, into the account. And Krishna, he understands everything. And so one of my services in 75, there was a big effort to finish the certain part of the Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I was working as an editor. And one of the cantos we were involved with, the fifth canto, the last chapter of which is the description of a small portion of the hells, different varieties of hells one can enter, according to different sinful activities. And it was quite a hair-raising chapter, although I didn't have much hair raised, but still you can understand. So those, this is existence. There's also heaven. There's also material heaven, where you can go and you can enjoy for many, many years godly delights, but it's still material, and ultimately you have to come back down here. Krishna talks about that in the 7th and the 8th and 9th chapters. We don't want to go to heaven because you have to come back. We want to go to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan, the place called Vaikunta. Kunta means anxiety. Vaikunta means the place free of all anxiety. Now, where can you find that in this material world? You can't, because the time factor is always there. Even if everything is set, you're living in a very peaceful area, you're loving the atmosphere, everything is fine. The time is moving and it's changing everything. Your kids are growing up, and these days they usually move away, and you're lucky if they call you, you're 75 and they're 30, enjoying, When is he or she going to call? It's been 2 weeks already. This is the stage, But anyway, this chapter is very nice, and this section of the 3rd chapter, how to act in such a way that instead of deepening our entanglement in this material world, we are gradually freeing ourselves because we're learning how to act in relationship to God, in relationship to Krishna. All right, if there's any comments or questions, feel free to grab a mic and we can do it. All right, we can actually finish this chapter now. There's only 1 or 2 verses more. Are we on 42? Indriyani paranyahu indriyebhyak parang manaha manasastu parabuddhir yo buddhe paratastu saha. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. Purport. The senses are different outlets for the activities of lust. Lust is reserved within the body, but it is given vent through the senses. Therefore, the senses are superior to the body as a whole. These outlets are not in use when there is superior consciousness or Krishna consciousness. In Krishna consciousness, the soul makes direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the hierarchy of bodily functions, as described here, ultimately ends in the Supreme Soul. Bodily action means the functions of the senses, and stopping the senses means stopping all bodily actions. But since the mind is active, then even though the body may be silent and at rest, the mind will act, as it does during dreaming. But above the mind is the determination of the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul proper. If, therefore, the soul is directly engaged with the Supreme, naturally all other subordinates, namely the intelligence, mind, and senses, will be automatically engaged. In the Katha Upanishad, there is a similar passage in which it is said that the objects of sense gratification are superior to the senses, and mind is superior to the sense objects. If, therefore, the mind is directly engaged in the service of the Lord constantly, then there is no chance that the senses will become engaged in other ways. This mental attitude has already been explained, padam drishtva nivartate. If the mind is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no chance of its being engaged in the lower propensities. In the Katha Upanishad, the soul has been described as Mahan, the great. Therefore, the soul is above all, namely the sense objects, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. Therefore, directly understanding the constitutional position of the soul is the solution of the whole problem. With intelligence, one has to seek out the constitutional position of the soul and then engage the mind always in Krishna consciousness. That solves the whole problem. A neophyte spiritualist is generally advised to keep aloof from the objects of the senses. But aside from that, one has to strengthen the mind by use of intelligence. If by intelligence one engages one's mind in Krishna consciousness by complete surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then automatically the mind becomes stronger, and even though the senses are very strong, like serpents, they will be no more effective than serpents with broken fangs. But even though the soul is the master of intelligence and mind, and the senses also, still, unless it is strengthened by association with Krishna in Krishna consciousness, there is every chance of falling down to the agitated mind. So it's very nice. This is called Sankhya. In fact, sometimes this whole chapter, this last chapter is called Sankhya. But Sankhya means to analyze what's going on. What am I? And we see that this is very descriptive. We're combinations. We have the gross body, which is really a very incredible machine when you think about it. And we have the different senses. We have the knowledge-acquiring senses, the ears, the eyes, the taste, the tongue, smell, like that, and the feeling, sensation. And we have active senses, the hands, the feet, the voice, etc. So the Krishna consciousness is a systematic process designed by Krishna himself to engage all of those elements, including the mind and the intelligence, in connection with him. Just like the intelligence, that's what we're doing here by hearing Bhagavad Gita and discussing it and thinking about it. We're using the intelligence to contemplate who we are, who God is, what is the ultimate goal of life, and how to achieve it. And all of that is explained here. Then it is up to us to strengthen our intelligence to direct the lower self, the mind and senses, to act in a certain way that will maintain and increase our connection to Krishna. And the easiest way and the most practical, and it's special for this age, is the chanting and hearing of this Hare Krishna mantra. This Hare Krishna mantra wasn't recently invented. It's very ancient. And it's even in the Upanishads. There's an Upanishad, do you know that? The Upanishad, one of the Upanishads is called the Kali Santarana Upanishad. This is the age of Kali. Kali means quarrel, dissension, fighting all the time. Just look at the newspaper headlines. But Santarana means deliverance. So here's the Upanishad that helps you be delivered from the ills and evils and dangers of this particular age we're living in. So this Kali Santarana Upanishad has two verses that say it all, And one of the first verse is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That's also a verse that has 16 syllables. Just like that. The next verse is Iti Shodashakam Nam Kali Kalmasha Nashanam. Natak Padataropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. These 16 names, Shodashakam is a word in Sanskrit, means 16. These 16 names, Iti Shodashakam Nam, Kali, Kalmasha, Nashanam. So Kali means age of Kali. Kalmasha means all the difficulties and dangers inhering to being in Kali Yuga. Anytime, the earthquake could come, or some wars or something, and so this is a very disturbing age. But this Kalmasha Nashanam, so this destroys the evils of this age. In other words, these natural things are going to happen anyway, but you'll be able to increase your ability to tolerate it and keep your equilibrium even in great dangers and things that happen in this age. So this mantra helps you. So then it says, Natak Padataropaya Sava Vedesha Drishide. You look through all the Vedas, you will not find a better means of doing it than chanting and hearing these 16 names. So it's very powerful. Lord Chaitanya would quote this verse. And so this is a great blessing. We should try to understand how fortunate we are to live at this point in this time, in the Kali Yuga. Because there are cycles. So for these 4 yugas are going around. The Satya Yuga, where people were able to live for 100,000 years, and everybody was very calm and self-controlled, and yoga was very popular. It was completely different age. Then gradually in Dwapara Yuga, things deteriorated a little bit. but there was still a lot of worship of deities and things like that. Treta Yuga, there were a lot of sacrifices and so forth, And gradually people's ability to live long was also decreased. Now, if you live to be 100, it's like, well, you're special, But in previous age, you could live to be 1,000. And even before that, even longer than that. So Kali in many ways is a very difficult age. But because it's so difficult, the Lord has provided this very easy process of chanting the holy name and hearing. Practically, what's the big sacrifice? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. How difficult was that? Not at all. In other words, like chapter 6, Krishna will say, okay, Arjun, you sit like this, and you have to breathe like this, and look at the place between your eyebrows. I've tried that. In like 2 seconds, I'm already feeling I'm going cross-eyed. And but even Arjun said, no, it's not possible. The wind is like the mind is like the blowing wind, and it's very difficult to control. I don't think I can do it, So Krishna encouraged him, yeah, you can do it with practice. And what happens if I fail? Well, then you'll get bored in another thing, be able to. So Arjun is not very, hopeful, even in this age, and that's the previous age. So then Krishna says, Yoginam Bhavisarvesham. The last verse of the chapter says, the best yogi of all is the one who is always thinking of me within the heart and is always serving me with great and transcendental love. And Arjun sighs a big sigh of relief. Oh, well, that's me. I'm always thinking of Krishna. He's my best friend. Anyway, this Bhagavad Gita is like that. So we won't finish the chapter. We'll have to finish it tomorrow. But this is a very significant chapter because it encourages us that anyone, if you're determined, if you really understand the importance, you can do those things which you can gradually increase your spiritual strength to say no to Maya, illusion, yes to Krishna, and you'll gradually feel more satisfied in your life. And there'll be high points like wonderful kirtans we had over the weekend with Bhakti Vigyana Gauranga Swami. He was here for a few days. A very wonderful devotee, kirtans and classes, So this is what Krishna promises. All right, so we're almost out of time. So we're going to leave this last verse. Did we do 42? Yes. We do? Okay, so we're on the last verse of the chapter, which we'll complete tomorrow. But I have 2 minutes. I can share some poems with you. Now, this is one because we have some new people here. This is a simple summary of the injunction of Krishna consciousness movement. So, every body dies. Every single body dies. No one can deny that. It's just a fact of life. But every body dies, nobody dies. Wake up and open your eyes. You're not that body, you're a pure spirit soul. Chant the holy name and attain life's goal. It's all there. And here's a nice verse about Krishna written by a poet who was blind, but he always saw Krishna within his heart. Madhuram madhuram vapadasya vibhor. Madhuram madhuram vadanam madhuram. Madhugandhi madhusmitameta daho. Madhuram 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 madhuram. Madhuram means sweet. Sweet, sweet, and you'll see when the curtains open, hopefully you'll be able to stay. You look at Krishna Giridhari, it means he was lifting the hill, and you'll see it applies to him perfectly. Sweet, sweet is my dear Lord's form, sweet is still his face so fair, but his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. Very nice. And here's one final prayer from a great devotee, a queen named Queen Kunti. He says, I'll just give you the English. O Madhava, it's a name for Krishna. O Madhava, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. And on that auspicious note, we'll adjourn. And please stay for the Artik. It's just another 15 minutes and you'll be blessed. And also look for Radharani. She's standing there with her hand up like this. This is a special mudra. Mudra means that, like we have mudras. Huh? Are you kidding me? It's like so many. Yeah, exactly. So this is a mudra that means she's offering fearlessness. It's called abhay. Bhaya is fear. Abhay is fearlessness. Dan, the gift of fearlessness. She's saying just Try to love us, worship us, sing our names. Everything will be fine. You know, just sit like this. You see, hold. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.